All right, so we're back with another deep dive. You know how this works. You guys send us the stuff you want us to dig into, and we pull out the interesting parts.
Yeah, and this time, we're looking at something that I think everybody struggles with a little bit,
Oh, for sure.
and that's, sometimes it's really easy to communicate with people,
Yeah,
and sometimes it just feels like you're talking to a brick wall.
it's true.
And so we had a listener send in this book called Surrounded by Idiots.
Yeah, Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erickson.
And, it uses a system called the DISC method.
DISC.
Yeah, and it's meant to help categorize how people behave and communicate.
I'm intrigued already, and this DISC thing, it's not new, right? I mean, I feel like I've heard of it, but like, where did this even come from?
Well, it's got a really interesting origin story.
Okay.
It all started with this question. Basically, could an agricultural salesperson sell more seed if they understood the farmer's personality better just by observing the farm?
Wow, so it all started on a farm.
Yeah, in a way, like that was the initial spark. And, the idea is that if you can adapt your sales approach based on the type of person you're dealing with,
Right.
you're going to be way more successful.
So from selling seeds to like psychology, that's quite a leap.
It is. And that's where Bill Bonstetter and his son David come in. They really kind of shaped this whole thing into what it is today.
Okay.
So David, he actually has this background in computer science and accounting,
Hmm.
and he kind of saw the potential to use software to systematize this whole thing.
Yeah, because his father, like, knew how to do this intuitively, but, how do you actually get that out to people? How do you create a system around it?
Right, exactly. And so that's what they did, and that's how TTI Success Insights got its start back in 1984.
1984.
And they were delivering these 24-page reports on floppy disks.
Wow, floppy disks. I mean, that's amazing.
I know, it's like ancient history now, right?
Right, yeah.
But, it's fascinating to think about it like that, but it really shows you that this whole thing's been around for a while.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they talk about David's father, Bill, as this, red-yellow personality,
Oh, yeah.
which we'll get into later, but this real go-getter entrepreneur.
Yeah, always trying to make things happen.
Exactly. And I love that it was so practical. It wasn't just an academic exercise. It was literally born out of this desire to help salespeople connect better with customers. And I think that's what we're trying to do here today, too.
Exactly. And that's the whole point of this deep dive, right?
Yeah.
To give you a shortcut to understanding why you click with some people and with others. It's like,
You're speaking different languages.
yeah, it's like you're speaking different languages. And the author, he actually even experimented with this in his own life. He'd say the same thing to different people in different ways and get totally different reactions.
I mean, that makes total sense. And I think we've all been there. You say something and it just completely backfires.
Yeah, and it's like, why didn't they get it?
Right.
Well, what Erickson really emphasizes is that communication, it's not just about what you say, it's about how it's received.
Right.
It's like everything you communicate gets filtered through the other person's experiences, their biases,
Yeah,
their
they
beliefs.
look at their own personal spin on it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So the message you intend to send isn't always the message that lands.
Which is why I love that phrase from the book, create a secure arena for communication. And the key is to do it on their terms, not yours.
Yes, because it's not about forcing your way of thinking on someone else.
Right.
It's about understanding their needs and adapting your communication style accordingly.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because I think a lot of times we just get stuck in our own way of communicating.
We do. And, you know, it's also important to remember that this book, it's not a perfect system.
Of course, yeah.
Human behavior is complex. There are so many factors that play into it.
Body language, cultural differences.
Exactly. Even just someone's mood that day can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a tool, but it's not the only tool in the toolbox.
Right. And the author, he even quotes Carl Jung in the book.
Carl, yeah.
Yeah, it says, "We see what we do, but we do not see why we do what we do. Thus, we assess and appraise each other through what we see that we do."
Yeah.
Which I think is just a good reminder that we're all kind of mysteries to each other to some extent.
And we're always judging each other.
We are.
Yeah.
But that's kind of human nature, right?
Right.
But I think the more we understand about different behavior patterns, the better equipped we are to navigate those complexities.
Absolutely. So let's get into the nitty-gritty here.
Let's do it.
We're talking about these color-coded behavior types, red, yellow, green, and blue. And I think it's important to point out these aren't random.
Yeah, they're not just pulled out of a hat.
Right. They're actually rooted in some pretty old theories.
Yeah, going all the way back to Hippocrates with his 4 temperaments.
Oh, yeah.
Choleric, sanguine, melancholic, phlegmatic. And then later on, William Moult Marston kind of built on that with his DISC theory. So this idea of categorizing behavior,
Hmm.
it's been around for a long time.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that we keep coming back to these basic
It
patterns.
is, isn't it?
And I think that's because there's some truth to them.
I agree. I think they give us a framework for understanding people better.
So let's start painting with these colors.
Okay, let's do it.
First up is red. What do we need to know about reds?
So reds are all about action results.
Yeah.
They're driven,
Yeah.
they're decisive, they're competitive,
Yeah.
and they're very focused on the bottom line.
Okay.
They can be impatient, though,
Right.
and they tend to be very task-oriented.
So they're the get it done type of people.
Exactly. And the book actually gives this great example of a CEO who turns a casual soccer game into this super competitive event.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, for Reds, everything can be a challenge. Even reading a book faster than someone else.
I can see that.
Yeah. So if you're communicating with a Red, get to the point.
Yeah.
Be direct, focus on the outcomes.
No beating around the bush.
No beating around the bush with Reds.
Okay, got it. So red is all about action and results. Let's move on to yellow. What makes a yellow tick?
Oh, yellows, they're the life of the party. They bring the energy.
The energy.
Yeah, the enthusiasm, they're optimistic, they're persuasive, they love to connect with people,
Yeah.
they're curious, they love new ideas, and they're very spontaneous.
I mean, they sound fun.
They are fun, they're great to be around,
Yeah.
but they can also be a little bit scattered sometimes.
Okay.
They might overcommit
Mm-hmm.
because they're so enthusiastic about everything.
Right. They want to do it all.
They want to do it all. So with yellows, it's important to make sure that you have clear follow-up and that you help them prioritize.
Keep on track a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But, their optimism, it's contagious.
Yeah.
It's great for brainstorming, getting those creative juices flowing.
I like it. All right. So we've got the action-oriented reds. We've got the enthusiastic yellows. Now, what about green?
Green is all about stability, harmony.
Okay.
They're the calm ones in the group.
Okay.
They're patient, they're thoughtful, they're empathetic, they really value relationships,
Okay.
they avoid conflict,
Right.
they're loyal, and they really like things to be predictable.
They like to keep things steady.
Exactly. And the book gives this really sweet example of a green colleague who calls the author on a Sunday morning.
On a Sunday morning.
Yeah, seemingly about some minor work issue, but it turns out he just wanted to check in and offer support.
Ah, that's nice.
Yeah, and that's so typical of a green. They really care about people.
So with greens, it's all about creating that safe, comfortable space.
Yes, especially if you're dealing with difficult topics.
Right, and maybe not being so direct.
Yeah, they might need a little more time to process things.
Got it. All right, so we've got reds, yellows, greens, and last but not least, we have blue.
Blue. So
Yeah.
blue is all about precision analysis. They're the detail-oriented ones.
Right.
They're logical introverted, they really value quality, and they're very cautious.
Okay.
They're also very task-oriented.
So I'm kind of like reds in that way?
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
But blues, they're more focused on the accuracy, the
Mhm.
thoroughness.
Right. They want to make sure everything is just right.
Exactly. And the book has this example of a CEO in the packaging industry.
Packaging.
Yeah, and he required a 35-page document before he would even consider a leadership program.
Wow. 35 pages?
35 pages, that's a blue for you.
That's intense.
They need all the information.
So when you're communicating with the blue, give them the data.
Given the data, be thorough, be well-reasoned,
I don't leave anything out.
but also don't overwhelm them with irrelevant details.
Right. Find that balance.
Exactly.
All right. So just to recap, we've got reds, the action-oriented ones, yellows, the enthusiastic communicators, greens, the steady relationship builders, and blues, the meticulous analysts. And it's so important to remember none of these colors are good or bad.
Yeah, they're just different.
They're just different ways of approaching the world.
And they all have their strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy of behavior patterns as tools in a toolbox.
Yeah, like a hammer.
Okay.
It's great for driving nails, but it's not going to be very helpful if you're trying to assemble a tiny little electronic device.
Right.
So you need the right tool for the job.
Mhm.
And the same goes for communication.
You've got to know your audience.
You do.
And I think once you start thinking about people in these terms, it really does change how you see them.
It does. It makes you more understanding, more patient.
More forgiving, maybe?
Maybe.
Because you realize that they're not trying to be difficult. They
Right.
just see the world differently.
And they communicate differently.
Exactly. So the key takeaway from this deep dive into Surrounded by Idiots is understanding these different behavior patterns.
Yeah, that's the
It
foundation.
gives you this incredible insight into how and why people communicate the way they do.
And it helps you avoid those frustrating misunderstandings.
Exactly. So let's do a quick review.
Okay.
Reds are driven and decisive, but maybe a little impatient.
Yeah.
Yellows are enthusiastic and optimistic, but might need help with follow-through.
Uh-huh.
Greens are calm and empathetic, but can be resistant to change.
Right.
And blues are analytical and detail-oriented, but can sometimes get lost in the details.
Yeah. So think about these characteristics. Do you recognize any of them in yourself?
Yeah.
And in the people you interact with?
Who are you surrounded by?
Yeah, who are you surrounded by?
And here's the final thought for you to ponder.
Okay.
Now that you have this basic understanding of these 4 behavior types, how can you consciously adjust your communication style when you're dealing with someone who's very different from you?
Good question.
Think about past conversations that were difficult.
Yeah.
Could understanding these patterns have changed the outcome?
Hmm.
Could it have made things smoother? Could it have helped you feel less surrounded by, well,
Surrounded by idiots.
Exactly. So it's all about building those secure communication arenas one interaction at a time.
One interaction at a time.
All right. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.